about effective meetings and the rapid improvement cycle that we're working with several Illinois schools on. That seems to be a nice way to structure the conversations about interventions for Tier 3, but also looking at core instruction across the board and looking at one of the things we found that's really common is that schools write really great improvement plans and then have a hard time executing on them. And so we found that the rapid improvement cycle is something that really helps with that too. My name is Holly Pedersen, and my background is education all the way. So I started as a classroom teacher. I've taught elementary, middle, and high school. I've taught general and special education. I'm also a school psychologist. That's what my PhD is in. And then I've been a building and district administrator, as well as an administrator at the state level. I think the thing I'm most proud of is I was the chief learning officer for a district that was a restart district. So it was 45 schools that through voter action split from another district, and we kind of had to build from the ground up. And so that taught me a lot about change and about supporting people through processes that may be a little bit difficult, and also about just what needs to happen and what you can get done in a short period of time. I was surprised in the end of how much we were able to do in a short amount of time.
And I'm Carrie Miller. I've got the pleasure of working with Illinois Empower Schools with EdDirection. So that's been a wonderful part of my work in the last year. Before joining the EdDirection team about 4.5 years ago, I spent 12 years in schools wearing a bunch of different hats, everything from a classroom teacher, grades 7 through 12, to dean of students, assistant principal, admissions representative. Probably the thing that I am most proud of is I worked for 2 summers in a credit recovery program for a suburban school district that had a number of Title I schools and achieved 100% credit recovery with those students both summers.
Nice, nice. Well, I want to honor your time, so I'm gonna cruise through. You've got the PowerPoint there. As you can see on your PowerPoint, slide 3. We were going to have a discussion just about, how we can get back some time. When we work with schools across the country, what they overwhelmingly tell us is that they need more time. They want more time. And what we found is that having effective meeting practices does facilitate that and does make that happen. So in the interest of time, we're going to cruise a little bit through. So we've already introduced each other. Just to give you an idea of the mindset that EdDirection brings to the table, we really invest in educators. We believe in building the expertise of the individuals who are in the building. We're not big fans of total takeovers where all the staff are fired and then they hire new people, partially because we just haven't seen it have sustainability over time. What we've seen is that you may get some quick wins early on, but 5 years later, we don't see the same wins that were there. So our model is to invest in the educators who are on site and to really provide coaching and professional development to them. Our team is all individuals that have been in schools that were in turnaround and been successful in those schools. I don't hire them if they haven't. So they really have a good eye to provide feedback to the schools with which we work. We also value the slog. I say that lovingly because as you can see in the quote on slide 5, the slog is what makes it happen. And unfortunately in education, we've become glitter and balloons fans where we're looking for the shiny objects and we're looking for the new thing to do. And the truth of the matter is, it's not the new thing to do. It's to take that excellent plan that's tied to the root cause of the underperformance at the school and make it happen, make it get to every student, to every classroom. We also feel really strongly about engaging all levels of the system. So when we work with a school, we don't just work with the teachers or just with the administration or just with central office. We try to connect the dots between all of them. In fact, we also try to connect the dots with, the state level. Roxanne Filson is now on our call, and she's with IllEmpower. She's one of our favorite partners across the country. But an example of connecting the dots is really that proactive outreach to each of the levels of the system. Our firm wrote a book, Collaborative School Improvement. It was published by Harvard Press, and its whole point is to talk about what the central office can do to better engage schools in improvement cycles. The last thing that we have there is that we're really very much so invested in equity and access. Our team, every single person on our team has a story as to why they're here. And every single one of us comes from a background that we want to go back. I always quote Sandra Cisneros, House on Mango Street, where she says, you know, Esperanza needs to go back to those who didn't get out. And I think that's something that we really feel strongly as a team. So if you're working with us, those are kind of some core values of ours. We've worked in a lot of places since 2007. So this isn't our first rodeo. You can see on the slide number 6, that we have some examples of some of the groups we've worked with. Slide number 7 shows our team, the members of our team, and the individuals who work with schools. We are educators. We value that. You'll notice that most of us are mid-career people. We're not retired superintendents who are dipping our toe back in the water. We're people who really want to do the slog work. Our theory of action, I'm going to go kind of quick through this, but basically if we invest in people and we invest in evidence-based practices and we provide coaching and support so that implementation habits are solidified, we see improvement in schools. When we look at leaders, so every school that we work with, one of the key features of our work is we will not work with a school unless they will engage in leadership coaching. We've just found that we can do a lot of great work in a school, but if the leader is not driving that, it's a problem. So we definitely engage in that. And when we work with leaders, we look at, you know, their personal characteristics and their technical capacity, because in tandem, those two things are really needed for an effective school leader or district leader to move the dial for students. But then we really engage in deliberate practice through the rapid improvement cycle. And that's the cycle that we also help teams with when they meet. And that's the focus of our discussion today. So the rapid improvement cycle is on slide 10, and it shows the steps in the process. So there's a prepare phase, and then there's an iterative process in the middle that in most schools happens on a weekly basis. So they're coming together, they're looking at what they have taught and how the students have done on that. They're reviewing their measurement. You brought up their benchmarks. They're also reviewing their short-term assessments, their weekly assessments, and then they're making adaptations together. And that process we have found is incredibly powerful, but it does take some real time for educators to own it. Like you said earlier, if the assistant principal or the principal isn't in the room, do they still value the opportunity to go through that process? And that's something that we have seen in some of the Illinois schools thus far is something they really value. This slide I'm going to just go really, really fast on. So we are very deliberate in how we do our work. We focus on implementation, and we focus on structuring the coaching and professional learning to match with what the evidence base tells us is most effective. So we're now going to just transition to the topic of rapid improvement, effective meetings, and I'm going to let Carrie start driving for a second.
Yeah, so at this point, I'm on slide 13. And at a high level, this is very structural in practice, but we've found a couple of things that works quite well with this element of our rapid improvement process. One is that these are really tangible action-oriented things that any team can take and implement tomorrow. So, you know, you talk a lot with effective instruction about taking tomorrow's solutions that individuals can implement regardless of what they teach, regardless of what grade level they teach. And we found that it's quite similar with effective collaborative practices as well. So what you can see on slide 13 is an overview of the 4 components that we really hone in and support our partners to take and to implement. These might seem like minor shifts as you're looking through them. However, we found that they really can lead to substantive improvement. So you can see that our recommendation is that we're always striving to ensure that effective meetings are intentional, that they are data-driven, that they're action-oriented, and that they are reflective. So when we say intentional, we're really speaking to the planning that we're putting into place. We're not just ever meeting to meet. We're meeting with a decisive goal. We're meeting with meaningful stimulus that is 100% targeted to improving student outcomes. So it might be stimulus like a lesson plan. It might be stimulus like student data. It might be stimulus for a school leadership team connected to a strategic improvement plan and the extent to which that plan is gaining traction at the school or not. But we highly recommend that the professionals in the building, to maximize their time, support their time together with protocols, with roles, and with that pre-planning that really can make a difference in maximizing our time together, knowing that there's just never enough time to do the things that we want to do. The second piece is that we are data-driven. So I referenced the stimulus before. We always want to have a meeting that is driven by data. And as you could see with the examples that I shared, those data do not need to be constrained to the student. They should be about student learning, but student performance data might be one of several data types that we'll bring into a meeting together to discuss and expand our practice. Action-oriented. It's one thing, as we know, we in education are really, really good at collecting data, turning that data into meaningful action. And Kim, I think your career before education probably emphasizes this for you probably better than most. But if we don't take the meaningful information that we have and turn it into action, our meeting is really in vain. It doesn't accomplish the goal. So it's essential that whatever it is that we are looking at leads to, in the time together, some sort of an action that we are going to take, whether it's improving instruction, whether it's making a plan to support one another in our professional learning, whether it ties to making revisions to a school improvement plan, knowing that we're perhaps not yet on track at the level that we want to be. And then the final piece is being reflective. I think effective teams, as we have seen them work, are reflective in their practice just by nature, and effective educators are as well. They reflect on what worked, what could have worked better with any practice that they implement. When we talk about reflective, however, we're also talking about being reflective about the meeting. So if we have norms like all voices need to be heard at each meeting, and we stay engaged in the meeting the whole time, examples like that, we might reflect at the end of our meeting on the extent to which we feel that we did that, and hold one another accountable to that, so that we know that as we move forward, we're always maximizing our time. I realize that this is a lot of information that we've shared with you, including a bit about who we are.
And I think another piece, we do a lot with, we have a partner, anyone who works with us gets a couple of digital supports that are no, there's no charge, because we found that they help with sustainability. And so we have a digital support for meetings that allows administrators at any level to see the agendas for each of the groups that are meeting. Also, the notes and the to-dos, so it manages the workflow for meetings. The other thing that we have is we are partnered with a company that does video conferencing, but video coaching, so that we can do even bug in the ear or real-time feedback. And so that's a piece of the work that we do, because we really feel like that touch that's in the moment, giving feedback like that, is so valuable to the work of schools. But I would encourage you also, reach out to IllEmpower, and you can ask them, you know, what they're seeing could best meet your needs, because I can't really, I can only speak to what we do. I'm not really confident in speaking to what others do.
If I could comment, I am Roxanne Filson. I'm a school support manager with Illinois Empower, and I'm sorry I connected on here, and you were already quite a ways into your presentation.
We can hear you loud and clear right now, Roxanne.
Sure you can. Thank you. Anyway, you are welcome to contract with multiple learning partners. You can have as many learning partners supporting the work in your schools and district as you think is appropriate and meet your needs. I'm noticing in my particular area that this year, many folks have initially started with one learning partner, but they have noticed that they have greater need than what that only one learning partner can provide. And so they are looking to add additional learning partners for different veins of the work. Maybe it's because one learning partner has deep levels of expertise in areas that another one doesn't. Or maybe it's just the capacity of the particular learning partner they're currently using. They need to add additional work and additional supports. So I'm not sure it's Camilla or or I'm trying to think who your school support manager might be, but please feel free to reach out to that particular person, or I'm always happy to help you as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Roxanne. I think the only thing we have left is just to substantiate our claim that effective meetings work.
Absolutely. You can see on slide 14 after the overview that I did some of our recommendations. I've already spoken to each. So if you have questions about anything that we summarize. Yeah.
And this slide number 14, these are categories that were included in our piece for Fordham. We recently wrote for the Fordham Foundation about effective meetings. We were super excited because the Marshall memo actually picked it up as well. So it really let us know that effective meetings are not a problem that just we are seeing. They're a problem everywhere. So these items are included a little bit more detail in the article that Carrie sent out with her email.
Okay.
So this first one is a statewide partnership. This includes 80 schools. And what we're looking at here is both some qualitative and some quantitative data. So within 1 year, the partner schools had double the growth that the average school in the state had. And the partner schools that were high implementers, those that really accessed the supports that we can provide, they were able to have significantly higher growth. And like I said, this is just 1 year, so we were really excited about that. But I think what was more exciting to us is the teachers reporting that, you know, it was meaningful to them and helping them, because we know if they don't buy in and they don't own it, it's not going to sustain over time. And our team has become all about sustainability because it just breaks our heart when we work with an organization, we see great gains, and then 2 years later, they've slid back into a place that they don't want to be. The next one is a district-wide partnership in Evansville, Illinois, and they call their school districts corporations, which is really interesting to me. They were awarded the best district for Indiana after working with us. They had 9 underperforming schools that were transformed simultaneously. And you'll see there that 10% of their schools the first year had A grades, and after a 2-year partnership, they had 43% of their schools have A grades. So we were really proud of that work. Doesn't mean that we don't need to take our foot off the gas, because there are still schools in that organization that are getting D's and F's, but at least we've seen that it's possible to improve, and effective meeting practices is one of the big levers that they pulled to make that happen. And then this is an example of turnaround schools. So these are schools that were identified because they were in the bottom 3% proficiency for their state. 86% of them successfully turned, which I think is a pretty good rate. 5 of the schools increased their statewide ranking by 2 or more letter grades, and 100% of the schools, when we surveyed them, said that they would select us again as their partner if they had the opportunity to do so. And we kind of hope they never have the opportunity to do that again, because we don't want them back in turnaround. They've done such hard work.
And then, like we mentioned at the beginning of the call, we wanted to showcase some of the early wins of Illinois Empower Partner. So on slide, oh goodness, that page number. 19. Thank you. On slide 19, you can see a high-level snapshot from Tri-City Unified School District. We've been working with their junior high. So some of the obstacles that were identified there in our planning year, so that classroom observations indicated that students were passively engaged and missing opportunities to really engage in their learning. They had curriculum maps, but the curriculum maps were not yet being utilized with fidelity on a daily basis for teachers to be thinking hard about how they were teaching what and when and why. And then another big piece was just the lack of structure with collaborative meetings, which ties back to the conversations that we've been having today. So we've designed a lesson plan template that all the teachers are now using. We did that in conjunction with the school leadership team. We've been providing coaching. Actually, this week, one of our coaches is on site at Tri-City today. And so providing targeted coaching to individuals around teacher clarity. What is it that I want my students to learn? Why? And how will I know when they've learned it? How do I make all of that learning visible to them? The faculty also engaged with us in summer work to look at their curriculum maps again, ensure that they are linked to priority standards, and then begin to formulate a process to be able to embed that into their daily instruction. The last thing that they did was engage in professional learning around effective meeting practices. And so you can see on the right-hand side of this slide, in addition to some demographics about the school, you can also see their new agenda. So they have set team norms. They remind their colleagues of their team norms, whether they're having a faculty meeting or a PLC team meeting or a school leadership team meeting. They always have roles, so they've always got someone to facilitate the meeting, and it is rarely the principal or the superintendent. It is most often a teacher leader. They always have a timekeeper and a note taker. They're not shy about letting the time run out if need be, just to maximize their time together, which we appreciate was initially an awkward transition, but they've quickly appreciated that they can actually get through the full agenda that they've set out for their time that they have as well. And you can see at the bottom of their agenda that they are really, because we are in the first full year of work together, they're using our coach regularly to get regular feedback through the deliberate practice that they are starting.
Illinois had its own rubrics for the planning year, which we help schools engage in. They didn't require a root cause analysis protocol, and that's something that we found really valuable in schools. So typically what we do is get the results from evaluation and then use those to take a team through a process to identify and prioritize the root causes that they want to address, the obstacles that they feel are hindering their students' performance. So definitely with Tri-City, we worked with Jill and her team so that the teachers could have some ownership over the work that they were doing. If you ask the teachers at the school what their obstacles are, I believe they will tell you the same obstacles that are listed on that slide, because it was a very collaborative process. Yeah, what happened with the superintendent in Tri-City that I think was really savvy, they completed the rubric for IllEmpower, and it gave them some really good information and helped them know where to start. And then Jill contacted with us to come in and do a curriculum audit. And so we were able to take that curriculum audit into a root cause analysis to identify the obstacles and to show the teachers some really substantive information about what was happening at their school and what could be happening at their school.
Anything that jumped out at you from this presentation that seems like something you'd like to take and try, do it. We know that there is never enough time to do all the things that we want to do in this work, and we hate it when folks are in a spot where they feel like they have to reinvent the wheel. So part of why we initiated this was that so we could ideally develop some additional relationships with some of the other Illinois Empower schools, but also we just wanted to share out what's working with your colleagues. And so if you see something that stands out to you that you'd like to take and try, go for it. If you have questions as you try it out, just reach out. We'll make sure that you've got our emails as a follow-up.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the superintendent of Tri-City would answer any questions that you may have as well.
Absolutely.